Okay, so I'm joined with James Marsh, who's a relationship coach, and James is going to tell us a bit about his story and what he does to help people with their relationships. So welcome to my first podcast, James.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to finally sit down and have a conversation with you, Mark.
Excellent. How are you?
I'm good. I think I'm in a good place. Physically, mentally, I'm in a good place, and happy to be here.
Cool. So you help people with their relationships. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I'm in that space where I'm in my mid-40s. I've been through a lot of life transition in the last few years. Mm-hmm. On a physically, mentally, emotionally, in my relationships at home and in working life, and I've certainly helped my friends kind of deal with that. I've seen them doing the same kind of things, mm-hmm. And it's a difficult period, I think, for people when you're in that mid-40s. I think there's a lot of relationships that start to change. Some of the dynamics, if you've had children, they get to that stage where they're a little bit older and they're less dependent on you, and they start to find their own way in the world. If your relationship with your parents changes, and there's a lot of change in terms of the dynamics, and that can be a bit unsettling. It can be a bit different for people to try and find a new way, and that's kind of the space I'm in helping people find some positive solutions to move forward.
Yeah. Okay, so what got you started on that journey? What got you started in that? What got you interested in coaching?
So I had a long career in management. I used to been involved in lots of companies, sort of fairly senior levels, building teams, doing leadership development, training and developments, sales skills, that kind of thing. And the coaching kind of toolbox is something that's really useful in that kind of environment, because if you're helping someone to develop on a professional level, then it's not just about telling them the right things to do. You have to coach them through their own perceptions and their own realities, mm-hmm. To get some movement and development. And that's something I learned fairly early on in my career, that coaching was a really valuable tool. Mm-hmm. So I was coaching kind of in business really for most of my career. About kind of 5.5 years ago, I had a bit of an enlightenment moment, I suppose, if you like, mm-hmm. Where I was sort of suffering from burnout. I think I've been with the company for quite a long time, this particular company, mm-hmm. And I had a pretty good role with them. I was in a management position, and it was at a really busy kind of period for the company. We had some real tough targets and objectives that we had to hit, mm-hmm. At that particular period, and the team that I was running were very stretched, and we had a massive IT failure. Mm-hmm. Now, anybody, we rely very heavily on IT systems in most working environments, and when the IT system went down, we still had all these other things that we needed to achieve, but we had to do it without the use of computers, and it was a real struggle. I mean, we had an 8-day period where they literally had to rebuild the whole IT system around us, mm-hmm. which added extra things on. And I was working kind of 12-hour days every day. The team was kind of falling apart, and I was holding them all together. And it was just, I just kind of had this moment where I stopped and thought, what am I doing? I'm sacrificing time with my family, sacrificing times with my friends to do all this, and I didn't get a lot of support from external, from the senior management within the company. Mm-hmm. We still achieved what we needed to achieve, which was a bit of a miracle, really. But it was crazy. And I remember there was a point within that you just start to feel like you're kind of in a bit of a bubble. You're not really aware of what's going on outside. You're just kind of drifting. Mm-hmm. And there was a point that I needed to go and get some fresh air, so I got a waste paper basket, and it was a bit full because we've been obviously generating a lot of paper with the paperwork. And I went out, and just behind where we worked, there was this alleyway that people used to go out and have a cigarette in occasionally, and it's a bit of a dirty old alleyway, really. People at night time used to go around and use it as a toilet and stuff, so it wasn't the best of surroundings, but I just needed to get out and clean my head. So yeah. I went outside, and I was just kind of just trying to just clean my head for 2 minutes, and we had one of those massive dustbins with the big flippy lids out the back, and I lifted the lid up and letting it against the back, and I was tipping this paper basket into the bin, and as I did that, I nudged the bin and the lid come down, and it cracked me across the top of the head, and then it bounced, and then it caught me, and it took all the skin off the top of my nose. And I was concussed, and I was stood in this urine stinking alley holding a empty waste paper basket with blood pouring out of my face, and I just thought, what am I doing? Why am I wasting all this time trying to fight for somebody else's dream when, you know, I could be helping other people achieve theirs? And it's just, you know, that was the point where I kind of thought that I need to be out of this, whatever that was, and doing something that I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And the thing then that, you know, had given me the most value, the thing that I really enjoyed doing was the coaching side of the role. You know, where I'd been helping people achieve kind of sales targets and job progression and leadership development stuff. You know, that I'd been asked a few times prior to that to go out and, you know, for people to, you know, I've got this issue in my life. You're really good. You really help me get through that work issue. Can you help me, you know, in this relationship I've got with my partner? And so it kind of built from that, and that was the kind of the seed of the idea, really. So that was the point that I started to go out and get some sort of additional training, I suppose, and I started to look at filling the gaps in my knowledge. So when you're coaching for performance, the kind of stuff you're looking at is a little bit different from interpersonal coaching, and when you're, you know, the different types of objectives. But a lot of the systems are very similar, but it was just framed slightly differently. So I really kind of went on a sort of a 2.5-3 year kind of educational kind of drive, and I just started to look and all different people, all different courses, just soak everything in. And there was a lot of stuff that I already knew, a lot of stuff I'd already covered, but it was just presented a little bit differently. Some of the language was a little bit different around it. But yeah, that was it really, and it's just built and grown from there. Excellent.
So you say a lot of your clients are kind of middle-aged. What's your kind of typical client?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm kind of targeting really at kind of men in their kind of mid to late 40s, early 50s, people who have had that career similar to me, that they've been out and they've worked a lot, they've sacrificed maybe some of their home life in order to build that career, and are now finding things a bit difficult, where they've got to that space where they suddenly think, why am I doing what I'm doing, and should I be doing something a bit better?
Yeah. Did you feel like you were wasting your life? How did it feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like I said, you're always fighting when you're in that kind of corporate world. You're always fighting to achieve somebody else's objectives. You're not really fighting to achieve necessarily your own. And there is that sense that, you know, I'm giving so much of my time and my energy and my fight to, I mean, yeah, ultimately you're paying me a wage, but am I achieving the things that are what I want to achieve in my life? Am I leaving the legacy that I want to leave?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the meme, if you're not building your own dream, you're building somebody else's.
Yeah, it's very true. And that's, you know, that's not to say that that's not a bad thing. I mean, some people are very content and happy to do that. You know, they like the stability of working for a wage. You know, it gives them some safety and some security. And you know, it's, everyone's very different and very unique, I suppose. But for me, it's that space that, you know, I wanted to dream a bit bigger. I wanted to fulfill something. I wanted to get to the end of my life and look back without any regrets, and then knowing that I'd done some good.
I think there's the sociable aspect as well of having a job. It's more social.
Yeah, I think when you're working in big companies with big teams, you get to meet lots of people. You get some different experiences, and there certainly is that. I think, you know, when you're out on your own and you're running your own business, it can be quite lonely. You know, certainly that's something I hear from quite a few coaches and people in that kind of space that I talk to, is that, you know, a lot of the time you're fighting on your own because it's your business, your company, the things you're doing. Nobody else is potentially aware of all the stuff that's going on. So yeah, it's a different feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's why I became interested in coaching and therapy, was to have more contact with people. Prior to this, I was working in web design, and running my freelance web design work, and I got really lonely.
Yeah. So I suppose if you're working, from home on a computer, I mean that's great versatility, but you're quite detracted from everybody else, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So coaching gives me more interaction, but I do still miss that kind of corporate environment a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I think it's nice that when you do coaching, I think one of the core skills of being a coach is being able to have conversations and talk to people, and just and that's one of the things I've always kind of really enjoyed doing, and a lot of the time, even aside that, I'll be reaching out and talking to people and just trying to get as involved as I can with different things, because you're right, one of the kind of core things that we need as humans is that kind of sense of bonding and interaction, and to have some kind of meaningful relationships.
Absolutely. So what's the most sort of, what are your clients challenged with? What do people tend to come to you with? What sort of problems?
It varies. I mean, it's one of the things that coaches are always told is that you've got to have a niche. You've got to have a real kind of an ideal client, that this is the person, and you always help that same person. And I don't think I've ever helped the same person twice. And what I mean by that is that everybody's unique. Everybody has their own unique perspective on things.
Absolutely.
In general terms, it's relationship issues. It's people who have, struggling either at work or at home with a spouse or a boss. Those sort of things come up quite often. It's people who are struggling to, build relationships with friends, build relationships with colleagues, build relationships with their children and their parents. Like I said, as you get a bit older, all those dynamics start to change, and it can be a whole new world. And the rules that you've spent your life kind of building, and the beliefs that you've had all through your life up until that point, suddenly start to maybe not fit quite so well.
Yeah.
So
it's quite an uncomfortable. It does create a discomfort, doesn't it? Because you start to realise that what you believed to be real, isn't real, and then that causes a lot of pain. Would you say?
Yeah, it can do. I mean, people certainly feel pain, because they get to that space where they just don't understand maybe why the other person's acting the way they're acting, and it can be like, you often hear the people say, well, they've changed and they're different, and I don't understand them, and it's part of life. We all change. We never live the same moment twice. It's just things grow, people grow, situations change, and people get fixed in a certain mindset or a certain belief set that they've had for a long time, and that belief and mindset is built from some solid evidence. It's built from the experience of their lives, and then when that set of beliefs and actions and things that was always worked suddenly stops working, or stops getting the results in the relationship that you previously thought you were getting, it can be a bit difficult to get your head around.
So is it that the relationship dynamic changes, or is it that the person themselves change and they become more aware of the dynamic not working anymore?
Yeah, I think it can be a bit of both. I think you can, you get to that space where you're maybe trying to achieve things, and your partner's trying to achieve things, and they can be a bit different, and you sort of lose that sense of purpose, and you kind of end up, you might have both been on the same path at one point, but then you find yourselves on slightly divergent paths, and that can feel a little bit awkward and a bit difficult. And sometimes things do go like that, but other times it's possible to pull them back together again, or to see the core middle ground and out.
Yeah. So do you have people come to you who have trouble seeing things from other people's perspective? Do you find yourself shifting them,
Absolutely, yeah,
looking at it from a third person? Or
yeah, I mean, that's one of the kind of core coaching tools, I suppose, and certainly in NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, you help people to kind of widen their perspectives and get some different kind of looks at the same situation. And people do find themselves kind of stuck and rigid in their beliefs, and sometimes it's good that they can maybe step out of that of themselves and start looking at things from somebody else's standpoint and their view, and broaden their own minds. And quite often they'll see things slightly differently.
What kind of issues do you think it causes if you can't see things from, some people maybe just refuse to see things from someone else's perspective?
I mean, I think a lot of people as well, they bottle stuff up, so because they can't process or deal with a particular emotion or a particular situation, they look for other solutions, and that can be in terms of, men particularly are very, very sort of bad at bottling things up. They'll hide all that emotions, they'll keep it all inside, and that kind of simmers away, and that builds a bit of anger, and it can build a bit of resentment. And sometimes as well, people can go the other way, where they'll feel lonely and they'll feel a bit lost in a relationship, for example, or they'll feel lost in their purpose at work, so they kind of withdraw a little bit, and they can go a bit into themselves, and that's another route people go down that certainly coaching can help with. One of the other things I see as well is that people suddenly feel that they're lacking in the connection in a certain area, either with their spouse or it's their friends or something. So they'll take some risks. They'll start to do a particular behaviour that they've not done before. They'll try something different, and they'll, because A, they're looking for excitement, and B, they're looking for connection. So they might start drinking, they might start gambling, they might start a new hobby, for example, that's something completely out of the character from what they've always done. And that can then lead to further issues. Certainly if you're drinking and gambling or womanizing or something like that to try and get that connection and that excitement, that then leads on to kind of feelings of guilt and shame, and you're having to kind of hide those actions. And a lot of time people try and then, they'll come to me and say, I feel really guilty because I've blown all this money and I'm in trouble financially. And you can deal with the output of that, and you can deal with the behaviours, but you've really got to go back to the start, to the feelings that they had at the beginning, that caused that kind of chain of behaviour and change from the start.
To look at what they're trying to gain from the behaviour, would that be?
Yeah.
So what would you say if someone was in just like have you ever had someone who was just in, a toxic relationship, and you just would have to say, just get out of it? I mean, it's all good seeing things from other people's perspectives, but sometimes there's just, someone might just be no good for them. Would you ever have that?
That's a difficult zone to get into as a coach, because I think it's, you've got to be respectful that obviously they've got into that relationship for a reason, so it wasn't hopefully always toxic. And ultimately the client has to make the decision that's right for them in their world. I mean, coaching shouldn't be about telling people what to do. It should be just about helping people understand the decisions that they're making, and to make sure that the decisions they are making are going to be the right ones for them. So it's just one of the things that coaching does is really, it provides you with like a good grounding of yourself, so you get to understand your core values, what's important to you, and that can really kind of be a solid road, basically, to kind of give you some good footing to make those difficult life decisions. Absolutely. But sometimes people in life, you have to make those tough decisions. You have to move on. You have to change that dynamic for your own self. So yeah, it can be tough. Life is difficult. Relationships are tough. And sometimes they require some hard decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes we just sort of outgrow the situation, and we just need to move on for our own sake, really.
Yeah.
Excellent. So anything else that you want to add, James? Any sort of advice that you'd give to people?
I think it's communication is everything. It doesn't matter whether any role that you're in, any relationship, communication is key. Mm-hmm. So many people kind of mask their feelings, or they try and hide behind a persona, or they kind of, I'd say, don't lie, but they sort of hide how they're really feeling. Mm-hmm. And that will change the outcomes you're getting in the relationship. Mm-hmm. Unless you're communicating honestly with yourself as well as other people, mm-hmm. then the situation isn't going to change. You've got to kind of try and get some honesty and integrity into the center of that, so that you can build from that. If you're not being truthful about how you're really feeling, mm-hmm. or the effect that another person's actions is having upon you, then it's not going to get resolved. So yeah, communication is key, and that's got to be a two-way street. You've got to listen as much as you talk. So
you've got to be authentic as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it'll show up in your body language anyway, if you're trying to mask how you feel.
Yeah, it can do, but people become expert at masking stuff. People put on personas. They'll go to work and they'll be one person, and then they'll come home and they'll be somebody else, and then they'll go and they change who they are, mm-hmm. for the situation, and they're doing it for the right reasons. They're changing their persona because they want to make the relationship easier. They want to smooth over those connections. They want to fit in. They want connection. They want to strengthen and deepen that relationship. But it doesn't always work that way, because you're actually being somebody who you're not.
Mm-hmm. Different states. So people, that comes from from the theory of transactional analysis as well.
Yeah,
I suppose when someone is middle-aged and their parents are getting older, that that can be strange, because you'd be interacting with your parents in the child state, but then they're more like children than you are now.
Yeah.
So that must get confusing for people.
Yeah. Well, I had a funny moment where I had to phone my dad in sick to work, mm-hmm. which was really strange. So I used to, not that I've ever been particularly ill, but you expect your parents would phone you into school if you were going to be ill, and I had that kind of. It was a bit, I'm really ill. Can you phone my work and tell them I'm not coming in? It was okay. So yeah, dynamics change, and we grow. Life is all about change. It's the only constant we've got, and you have to prepare for it, and you have to be ready for it, and you have to get the tools to understand how you're going to deal with it.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So how can people find you, James? How can people get in touch with you?
So you can grab me on Facebook, or I'm on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or on Instagram. Inner Metal Coaching. Mm-hmm. There's a website, innermetalcoaching.co.uk. You can come and find me there. Mm-hmm. Always happy to have a conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Thank you for being the first guest on my new podcast.
It's been a privilege and a pleasure, Mark, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks.